Hello everybody and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Roni Robbins, who is a journalist and an author, and she wrote the book The Hands of God, and it's all about her relationship with her father. And the way she wrote her book was really interesting because she took tapes and recordings of things he said and turned them into a narrative, making it a really interesting way of making a book. And I think it's a great way of creating some interesting stories out of historical events that have happened within your own family. It's a really fascinating story to hear how she got hold of the tapes and how she ended up using them. So I think you're going to find it a really interesting episode if you're ever thinking about writing something biographical. Hello and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm here with Roni Robbins, who is a award-winning author and journalist, and she's written her first book, and we're here to talk all about her first book, Hands of God. So Robin, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
So tell me, did you always want to be a writer?
Yes, I always wanted to be a writer. I started out just really being interested in my own penmanship, and it started from there. You write notes real nice at the beginning, and I always used to love to have a fresh notebook and start writing notes and in class and then I developed some interest in poetry, and I thought I might be a musician at one point, but I really just determined that I liked writing the lyrics. And then somebody said that they were going to major in journalism and it's all about writing, and I thought that sounds like a good job for me. So in high school, I made that decision and I took journalism, my first class in high school, and I wrote all the copy for the school yearbook, and they liked my writing, and it just took off. I got a scholarship to the university here and for journalism, and I thought, I'm not even a journalist yet, and they think I'm good at this, so I'll just stick with this. And I really haven't strayed from being a journalist all these years. So that's where the writing comes in. That led to the being an author too.
Yeah, nice. And are you still a journalist now?
I am. I'm freelancing right now for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution here in America and in Atlanta, Georgia, and also Medscape, WebMD, where I was an editor up until about a year ago. But I started freelancing for them, say 6 months later or so. And so I've been freelancing for two publications, healthcare publications or healthcare divisions of a daily paper on one of them for since like April.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So what was it that made you want to write this particular book, The Hands of God? There's a really interesting bio about it where you've got some of your grandfather's tapes and you listened to those and you've turned those into the book. So tell me a bit about the book and what made you want to write the book.
So I got the cassette tapes. My mom gave me the cassette tapes and that my grandfather had made before he died. And I used that as the basis for the novel. I transcribed all the notes, all of the tapes, and then I filled in the blanks. But initially, I didn't know I was going to write a book on it. I just was listening to the tapes, and then I wrote a column for a newspaper that I was writing for at the time, and the column was just leaving your legacy behind as something to hand down to your children and your grandchildren, and giving memories a voice. That's what I titled it, leaving a legacy to your progeny. I wrote that, and then I decided that I wanted to stay home with my children, and I thought there might be something more here that I could turn into a book, that there was more than could fit into a column.
Right.
So I decided to do that.
Nice. I did quite a similar project at school with my grandfather because he went to Berlin during the Second World War at the end, and he was one of the last people there. So he had loads of like random bits of Nazi like propaganda and things like that in his loft. So I was able to just put like these leaflets and things in this project I made about my grandfather. Unbelievable. Yeah. But so what's your book? What were the recordings like? How does it come about that you got hold of those recordings?
So my mom gave me them. I don't know why nobody else really had them. I know my aunt had them, and my aunt maybe made a copy for my mom, but nobody else knew about these tapes. So not really sure why, but if they were given to the other family members, they didn't pass them around. So my mom knew that I would appreciate them. I don't think she knew I would write a book, but she knew I would appreciate them. There were a few things in there, and you're like, oh, it's your grandfather's tape. Who cares? Like, okay, who's your grandfather? Like, why should anyone care about your grandfather? And I would tell them the same. I wouldn't have known either so much, and if I hadn't listened to the tapes and also just delved into his background, doing some research, genealogy research. But he and my grandmother, they died a year to the date, on the same exact date, a year apart. I thought that was super romantic. I mean, in a morbid sort of way, but just like you've gone through your life together and then you love each other so much that the first anniversary, which is symbolic for Jewish people, that first anniversary of the death would be so, heartbreaking that you couldn't even get through it. And so also in the tapes, I'm not sure they're in the tape or I made this part up, but I have at the beginning of my book, meet me in heaven, tie up loose ends and meet me in heaven. So I originally was going to name the book Meet Me in Heaven, but that's been overdone, overused. But there were some other things in the book. They lost most of their family in the Holocaust, but they weren't there. So how does that feel to hear about the loss of all your family and know that you had left them there or left before this happened, and there but for the grace of God go I. And we're talking full families, sisters, brothers, uncles. So there were 11 children there were 13 children in my grandfather's family, and 11 of them died. Few of them made it out and were able to live like him and live their lives fully, but the rest of them perished. And then he was also involved in a workplace shooting spree, and because he was recuperating from tuberculosis, and tuberculosis is a huge killer of people worldwide. We think that COVID is bad, but tuberculosis is still the biggest infection. It's the largest killer infectious disease that's killed the people around the world. And he was a test case for streptomycin, which is still used today as a treatment. He was told he was terminal at 27, but he lived till 87. So there were bits and pieces of his life that I thought I should string together to show that just some man, some everyday man can have such interesting parts of his life and be such a persistent survivor against the tragedies and the obstacles that get in one's way in life.
Amazing. Must have been quite emotional, like redoing the book with those tapes of the actual grandfather stories.
And I grew up with him. So, yes, but I'm a journalist and I'm used to separating myself from the facts. So, yes, if I cried maybe at the end, my thought was maybe that it would be powerful for other people too.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going for. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to make people cry, but they do. Um,
Yeah.
because that's the power of words, right? That's the power of showing emotions to people. And I wanted that all in there.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Now, coming to actually the writing process in the book. So when a lot of people I speak to want to write autobiographies either about themselves or maybe even other famous people. And so having those tapes, like forgetting that it's your grandfather for 1 second, it's quite a useful thing to have because it's so practical, a way of like getting all that information in one go. Could you tell us a little bit about what that process was like of getting that information and turning it into a novel, or even just writing it down and turning it into some kind of book?
So again, I transcribed the tapes, but that's not enough. And that was sort of dry. It's just one person talking. And I decided to make it into a novel where I would change all the names to protect all the people that are still alive, and also to create dialogue and make it much more interesting than it might have been, or a little bit more interesting. It was already interesting. But I did do a lot of research. I went to National Archives here in Atlanta, and also the Mormon Family History Center, the Church of Latter-day Saints. They do a lot of record keeping on families. So they have family history centers around the country. I'm not sure what they have in the UK, but I definitely went to physically to those locations because this was before ancestry.com, anything online. So it was all really primitive. It's microfilm and microfiche and using their old-fashioned technology to zoom through history, so to speak. So I did research there. I did research online when it was finally online, and I just had to be historically accurate. So there was a lot of details to fill in. So I could have just reported it as is. I had not reported, but
Yeah.
recorded it and written it as it was. But I wanted to really be historically accurate as a journalist. I wanted my facts straight, and I wanted it to be um, un people to take a step back into history and feel everything that was going on at the time, culturally and politically and historically, and I wanted it all in there. So there was a lot of research. I also interviewed a few family members, and so it took a long time. It did. And I think that was probably it. So I tinkered a lot. I went back and edited and reworked and reorganized, and it took a lot of work
Yeah.
to get that. It's not just, you know people ask me how it's different from journalism, and you might ask me that. It's different, but it's the same. There's a lot of skills from journalism that are the same and that I used in this work. But making up dialogue, having that kind of a conversation between people, that was definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Do you think your background in journalism helped you with the writing process?
I do believe it did, because I knew how to research, and I knew what facts I needed to double check, um, and back up, and how to take a step back and lay out, define any terms, define any pop culture that was going on at the time, take a step back and just expand upon some of the facts so that there's a context for the narrative.
Yeah. Now, I think a lot of people listening to this are going to be thinking, this is absolutely amazing that you've got these recordings of your grandfather. Now, they might want to be inspired to do something similar. So if you were going to, obviously you listened to your grandfather's tapes and he tapes them without really a plan. I'm guessing he just wanted to put his memories down. But if you were, was there anything missing from those tapes that you thought would have been a useful question to ask, or a useful way of going about doing that recording, that if someone was listening to this and wanted to do something with maybe one of their family members or something, or someone interesting they've met, that would be more useful?
So I think genealogists have a great sets of questions to ask family. So you can find some of those tools online for doing this kind of a research into your family. I think there can be if you ask questions, if instead of just handing the tape and letting them do it on their own, if you sat with them and asked them questions that you wanted answered, then that would be good, because they're just going to tell you what they want to tell you.
Yeah.
I don't think I learned from the tapes that my grandfather was in a workplace shooting. I don't think I learned from the tapes that he lost all his family in the Holocaust. He told me just his own life. Well, he didn't tell me. He told whoever would listen. Now, he says in the tapes, if anyone wanted to do anything with this, so be it. And I took that as a personal calling, as the only writer at that time, professional writer in the family, somebody who makes a living as a writer. So since then, there's been others that are turned out to be writers too, but they didn't maybe start out that way or weren't journalists. So I think if you have a plan in mind, and there are resources online to get to know how to interview family members, to create family trees, and you can use that. The same skills that they would use are the skills that I would have tried to use if I had the opportunity. So when I did have the opportunity to interview family members who are still around, who knew my grandparents, I interviewed a cousin and an uncle, who's in the book. Both of them are in the book. And they were very helpful to fill in some of the blanks, and to also tell me their own stories as it relates to my grandparents.
Great.
So
Amazing. Now, once you had the book written and you had all your notes, did you do all of the next steps yourself, like the editing and that, or did you work with a partner to get that thing done?
So I am an editor myself as a journalist. So I would say the majority of it I did myself, but I did have some help. I did allow people to read chapters. I'll tell you this, my I had a publisher. It took me some 20 years to find a publisher, a traditional publisher. I held out for that. And when I found her, I was working with her for 2 years and we were getting close to the finish line. And then we had some legal issues arising that stemmed from concern about me having an LLC and why I would need an LLC, which I think is important to have an LLC in case anyone tries to sue you in business or in this is a business. This is my business now. Is Mark is selling my book, but she was my there was concern that somebody might sue me, and my publisher got scared. But during that time, she was perfecting my book. So in essence, she edited my book, and I did pay her for that, and to get clear of the contract. I had that value of the editing process that was preparing for launch of the book in that whole process, and she did an excellent job of making my book into something really readable. And then I took it to the next publisher after 6 months. It was depressing, but after 6 months, I got another publisher who now had more of a finished product and took it to the finish line. So I did have that editing. I did pay for editing periodically. I had editing along the way at various points, but more so like the beginning of the book
Yeah,
versus the whole thing.
great. So, why did you decide to go down the route of having a publisher rather than self-publishing it all yourself?
Okay, so I know you support self-publishers, and there are so many things of value to have, to be your own business person, to be in charge of your own destiny. Yes, I get all that. See, I always wrote for other publications, so I felt as a journalist that I wanted to go through that grueling process but knowing that my book had been made it through the screening process and didn't end up in the slush pile, didn't end up in the garbage can, that I had made it to that point. So I was going to hold out on that because I'd been published by major publications. Why couldn't I get a book published? I didn't understand. It's the same concept. You're a storyteller one place, you get published. My stories have been picked up by Forbes and Huffington Post, and I was a contributor. I was a freelancer, correspondent for New York Daily News. And other publications. WebMD, I wrote for. You don't get to write for those places if you don't have quality writing. If you're not a good writer, if you're not a good researcher, if you can't tell a story and keep people's interest, you're not going to get in those. They're not going to pick up your stuff if you are terrible. So I also didn't want to subject people to reading something that I put out that wasn't through that process. Now, everyone has to make their own decisions. If you don't care about those things, if it's not about that, if it's about making money, if it's about, you just want the book out there, then self-publishing is probably the way to go. Self-publishing has come a long way too, I should say, since I started out trying to get published. It wasn't looked at highly, maybe as much as it is now. And now I know that traditional publishers also will take self-published books. On some will. So I also know that even if you are self-published, or even if you're traditionally published, you have to do all the marketing yourself. So in that way, it's not different. If you're about the profits and you want to keep the profits and you know how to set up a book online and you feel confident in your skills to do that, or you learned how to do that, self-publishing is great. It just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah, great. And talking about marketing, so what marketing did you do to make your book into a success?
Well, I don't know that it's a success, but I don't know what defines success. I've gotten 6 awards, so I would say enter awards, but be careful about the awards because everyone wants to market your book and everyone wants you to enter their award. So look at make sure that you've investigated that that these are legitimate awards, that they actually are not, not just awarding people who enter every single one, but they really do have they have judges that make these decisions, and they really do read your book. So I would go with looking online for those lists of the best awards to enter. So I won International Book Award, and I won Global Book Awards, and I won American Fiction Awards. I was a finalist for that, and I was a finalist for Legacy Awards. And so definitely there are certain awards, the American Book Fest, and those are legitimate, the ones that I mentioned. And there's Reader's Choice Awards. Just be careful and do your homework about the awards. But it does lend legitimacy to what you're doing. I won a 2009 Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award contest. I was a quarterfinalist for historical fiction. At that point, I knew I had something that it was worth putting out there. So that's when I started really looking for a publisher. After that point, I wasn't ready. I had a lot of cold feet. I had cold feet a number of times, or as they say, for doctors, there's some terms that they use for being scared. Imposter syndrome, that's what it is. So I didn't think I was an author yet, but I also am I set up special Facebooks for the book. I have a page, and I have a special Facebook account for Hands of Gold and for me as an author, separate from my personal one. I have a X. I built up it was Twitter then. I built up Twitter to have a following there. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. My son made my TikTok. My daughter helps me with my Instagram. Use all the resources that you have. I also entered opportunities to be in book festivals.
Yes.
And I was I've also been in a library book festival, and I've been in a big book festival here in which I was featured along with people like Nikki Haley, who is running for president here up until recently. This was before she was running, and Andrew Young, John Meacham, Michael Oren, Jodi Picoult, Benjamin Netanyahu. All of these people were either zoomed in or they were there, and that was a big break for me. But I had to go through the process to be in that book festival, Jewish book festival. So I think using all of your different opportunities to market yourself.
Have you had any specific opportunities come your way, or any particularly good stories come from winning the awards? Because obviously it's really nice to win the awards, but you kind of want them to either give you something that isn't just a nice little gold badge for your book. Have you noticed any upticks in sales or any good opportunities that have come your way as a result of those?
So I had a publicist help me to promote the International Book Award, and I got on Yahoo Finance, and a bunch of other publications picked up the story because it's on the PR Newswire. So I had a list of publications that picked up that story that I had won the award, and then you get, I wrote a little bit about that. I mean, they could have that background of the press release to use, if nothing else. So that went on Yahoo. Yahoo's pretty big. I think it was Yahoo Finance, and a bunch of other publications. So I think the legitimacy of all of these things. Now I'm in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum gift shop. My book is in there. I was in the Jerusalem Post. I was in the Washington Jewish Week, Washington, D.C. I think legitimacy is underrated, is credibility for your book. It's not all about being a bestseller. It's tiny baby steps to get there.
Yeah. So it sounds like using your network and people, for example, going into the Holocaust Museum when your book is specifically about those sort of stories, that's a great way to get that extra visibility for your book, and using your network. What was it like working with a publicist? How did that process work?
So I had a local publicist who I knew here. She used to pitch me stories at a publication. So PR agents are often publicists too. I mean, it's the same thing. They're just PR. They're PR for your book. She was here locally. I knew her. She had connections with this book festival, which was helpful. She used to be on the staff of this book festival. So those relationships are really what helped me to get into that local book festival. I think that it was good. It was very expensive. It's like $75 an hour, and I think that's cheap. That's probably a bargain. I know people who've spent so much more on their marketing, and it costs money. It
Yeah.
costs money to be a author. It's not. Hopefully, you'll get the money back. I'm not there yet, but I put out still money to try to get marketing. This is marketing. Yes.
What plans have you got for the future for writing new books?
So I already started on a book that's loosely based on my dad's life, right? I don't know why I'm writing about men, but men in my life, but we're going a little closer to home. My dad was a blacksmith. He made things out of metal. He was also got a lot of media attention over the years and got to be in some pretty neat places with his craft. I'm a writer. That's my art and craft. So his was metalworking, actual physical labor and beauty and creativity and art. And I'm going to write about him. He and I had a strained relationship. So he's a personality, in my opinion. So I'm going to dive into that one. I already started it. He passed away in March. So it's pretty raw right now. But I'm going through the mourning period, and I'm thinking about how to leave his legacy behind in this way. He didn't need my help. He had lots of articles written about him over the years, and we traveled a lot around the country with his displays. So yeah,
Nice.
that's my next book. And it takes off a little bit on the first book because he's a character in the first book with my mom. So there will be a little bit of crossover. And this book working title is A Mighty Arm, just like Hands of Gold. I seem to be also obsessed with people's arms, limbs. Right. There you go. Appendages. But our hands and our arms are very important.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great hearing about those backstories. It'd be really interesting for people, I think, who have thought about taping people's in their families' lives and understanding those stories and working out the exact processes you went through to get your books into to get some good sales and to get them selling well. So thank you very much. If people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
So www.ronirobbins.com. RoniRobbins is how you spell my name. I'm on Facebook either as Roni Robbins, Roni Kane Robbins, or Roni Robbins author, or just Hands of Gold. I'm on all kinds of social media. They can buy the book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart, any place they would buy books. Goodreads. It's available where books are sold, I should say.
Brilliant. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but I'm not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1.